Thanks so much for having me here today. It's amazing, and especially to follow up on Dara, who's inspired me as well as everyone else in the nature community in our generation. I spend most of my spare time trying to convince teenagers that birdwatchers are brilliant, so it makes a change trying to convince a room full of birdwatchers that teenagers aren't all that bad either. I've been interested in wildlife about as long as I can remember, and I'm not really sure how it all started. Perhaps it was from watching David Attenborough find extraordinary animals in far-flung corners of the earth, or perhaps it was from turning over logs in my own back garden. Either way, this interest really grew when I moved to rural Surrey, because suddenly I had a huge patch of heathland right on my doorstep, full to the brim of Dartford warblers and nightjars and all 6 of the UK's native reptiles. Unfortunately, with increasing urbanisation, this is an opportunity afforded to less and less children in each generation. It's no secret that kids are becoming increasingly disconnected from the natural world. It even has a name: nature deficit disorder. 3/4 of children in this country spend less time outside than prisoners, and this is a huge problem, not only from the perspective of human health, but also that of the environment, because without that intrinsic love of nature, where will be future generations' motivation to protect it? This is something I want to reverse. A couple of years ago, I started making short films showcasing British wildlife. What I found while doing these is while Britain is home to some beautiful, captivating animals like the grey seals behind me, even the smallest, most commonplace creatures can be made fascinating once you know just a bit about them. For example, did you know that the water boatman, found in virtually every pond across the UK, makes the loudest noise for its body size of any animal? 99 decibels. That's as loud as a motorbike. Why don't we hear them then? Because the vast majority of that noise is lost between the water and the air. It's these little details that captivate me, and that I think are one of the best hooks for getting people into nature. The very first film I made, in fact, was for an RSPB competition, and as part of the prize, I got to meet Miranda, which was fantastic. That opportunity opened a lot of doors for me, and one of those doors was the Phoenix Forum. I've done so many amazing things with the forum that I would never otherwise have done. I've been to Downing Street, I've pulled apart owl pellets at Country Far Live, and in some small way, I've had the opportunity to help shape the RSPB's future. This year, we went to the David Attenborough building in Cambridge to meet with Mike Clark and discuss the RSPBC strategy. After all, who knows teenagers better than a teenager? While there are loads of young children who are members of the RSPB, this really drops off during adolescent years, a bit like energy, motivation, and sentences with more than one syllable. Trying to retain these members is key in the fight against nature deficit disorder. We came up with quite a lot of ideas, actually, including increased local youth fora around the country, making the youth brand slightly more appealing to an older age group, and making more relevant volunteering opportunities to younger people. But these members of the forum have also individually done some really amazing things over the last year, which I'd like to share with you. Jojo Jenner, who gave this talk back in 2016, went to Country Far Live, where he spoke with the heads of various conservation organisations and met loads of like-minded young people. Rachel Gardner did 2 weeks of work experience with the RSPB, where she worked in as many different departments as she could and gained a real understanding of how the charity functions. She then went on to give a speech at Westminster to a load of MPs. She's been very busy. Personally, I've also tried to get more politically involved. In June, I gave a speech in London against the Japanese government's decision to resume commercial whaling. I'm sure a lot of you will remember and may even have participated in the first marches 30 years ago. And while it's deeply upsetting that whaling has persisted over this time, it's amazing to have that link between the generations. It feels like that baton is being passed on. I was also one of the youth ambassadors, together with Dara, that launched the State of Nature report on the 4th of October, which included being interviewed by Jon Snow live on Channel 4. But I can't mention political involvement without talking about the climate strikes, because this year we've seen incredible mobilisation in my generation. Millions of children protesting in over 100 countries around the world. I don't know how you will feel about it, but I hope it fills you with optimism. Not only does it show that my generation cares, but it demonstrates our incredible capacity to influence, because these strikes have undeniably had effects. I'm not saying it's enough, because it isn't. But nevertheless, young people are catalysing social and political change in this country and around the world, and momentum is carrying on building. What's more is that over the next year, we have an almost unprecedented opportunity to influence environmental policy. There are 5 key UN summits pinned in next year covering sustainable development, climate change, oceans and biodiversity, and if we put enough pressure on governments at those meetings, we could get global leaders to put in place the policies, targets and funding to make the changes we need over the next decade. And there's an international movement of young people poised and ready to ensure that that happens. It's called Youth for Our Planet, and it's just one of a wave of youth-founded, youth-led organisations that are springing up all over the place. Another one I'm involved with is Reserva, which is aiming to create the world's first fully youth-funded nature reserves around the world, starting with an area of 1,200 acres in Ecuador. So, here's what I want you to take away from this talk. The next generation is full of knowledgeable, passionate, driven people, but we need your help. We need your support, and we need platforms to speak on. I would never have become so involved in campaigning if it weren't for all of the amazing opportunities that people give me. If you can do the same for a young person, no matter what form that support may take, it will be appreciated and it will make a difference. In fact, it just might change the world. Thank you.